You know, the world's not running out of oil. There's all kinds of oil left in all kinds of places. So it's not about running out of oil. We're never going to run out of oil. But what the world is going to run out of is the oil that you can afford to burn.
Jeff Rubin is known internationally for his prescient calls on oil prices and the effects that has on international financial markets. He's also the author of the 2009 book, Why Your World is About to Get a Whole Lot Smaller. He joins me now. Jeff, welcome.
Welcome.
Good to see you.
Good to be here in Copenhagen.
Yeah, so let me ask you straight away, why is my world about to get a whole lot smaller?
Well, the reason that your world's about to get a whole lot smaller is in the very near future, we're going to revisit those triple-digit oil prices that we saw in 2008. And in a world where oil costs in the triple digits, distance costs money. It's not going to make any sense to be importing our steel or our food from far-off places like China just because their labor's cheaper, because what we'd save on the wage rate, we'd more than squander on the bunker fuel.
So what you're saying is that that high oil prices are going to mean the end of globalization.
That's right. I mean, the whole idea of globalization is the separation of production from markets. The idea that you can produce something at one end of the world to be sold at the other end of the world. One of the prerequisites for globalization was the dismantling of tariff barriers. But the other prerequisite was cheap oil. Because no matter how you move goods around the world, whether you move them by air, whether you move them by ship, whether you move them by rail or by truck, you're burning one fuel and one fuel only, and that's oil.
So what lies behind this idea that oil prices are going to continue to skyrocket or be up in the
Well,
triple
you know,
digits?
the world's not running out of oil, and it never will. There's something like 170 billion barrels of the stuff trapped in Canadian tar sands. There's about 500 billion barrels of the stuff trapped in Venezuelan tar sands. Unfortunately, the very prices that will get that oil out of the ground are the same prices that are going to get you to stop using it. Depletion isn't just a geological term, it's an economic term. Yes, we're not running out of oil, but we're running out of oil that we can afford to burn.
Let me ask you this question. If I'm an investor and I'm either invested in commodities like oil or maybe generally just a portfolio investor in the markets, what is all this going to mean?
Well, the first thing you got to realize as an investor in oil is the U.S. ain't driving this bus, okay? It wasn't U.S. oil demand that took oil to $147 a barrel a couple of years ago, and it won't be U.S. oil demand, or for that matter, OECD oil demand that's going to bring us back to triple-digit oil prices. Looking for U.S. oil inventories every week is looking for oil in all the wrong places. That's not where demand's coming from. Demand's coming from the newly industrializing countries like China, Russia, India, Brazil. Just as the developed world has long taken a back seat to the developing world in coal consumption, the same is about to happen in oil.
One of your theories that you've talked about is that it's actually oil prices that
That's
lie
right.
behind the recent recession.
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, I think everybody will agree that, you know, what blew up the subprime mortgage market was all of a sudden the sudden huge move in interest rates in the United States. The Fed funds rate, which is the benchmark rate there, went from 1%, basically free money, to about 5.5% in the course of 2 years. Well, the Fed, like every other central bank, will tell you your interest rate's a mirror image of your inflation rate. Beginning of 2004, the inflation rate in the United States was 1%. By the end of 2006, it was almost 6%. What drove that increase in inflation? One factor, one component in the US CPI, the energy component. Energy inflation was running at 35% as oil prices more than doubled. If oil prices would have stayed at $30 a barrel, like it was at the beginning of 2004, and all the experts were predicting it would stay at that level, well, the Fed funds rate would have never got to 5.5%. And if the Fed funds rate would have never got to 5.5%, all those good folk in Cleveland would still be in their homes financed by subprime mortgages. And I probably would still be the chief economist of CIBC. But that's not what happened. Oil prices doubled, inflation spiked to 5.5%, the Fed funds went to 5.5%, and we had the largest financial crisis since, I guess, the 30s. But the subprime mortgage crisis, it wasn't the cause of the crisis, it was a symptom. It was a simple symptom of an energy shock. An energy shock that triggered inflation and triggered that crippling rise in interest rates.
Big focus on green energy.
Yeah.
What does that mean for oil prices? What does that mean for the oil industry in general?
Well, you know, it's really not all about trying to turn cow shit into high octane fuel. It's about getting off the road. By that I mean to say, everybody wants to find alternative sources of energy supply. Why? Because we all want to be energy pigs. We don't want to reduce our energy consumption. And if you give us enough time, economic history says that triple-digit oil prices will lead us to find technological alternatives. Unfortunately, our rendezvous with triple-digit oil prices isn't in 10 or 20 years. Our rendezvous with triple-digit oil prices is, if we get an economic recovery, in the next 6 to 12 months. The answer is on the demand side, trying to re-engineer our economy so that we're not hostage to oil prices. And that means going away from the model of a global economy to the model of a much more local or regional economy.
Great. Jeff?
I think this is a wrap.